I should have known something was wrong when Nathan insisted on hosting the quarterly staff meeting at our care facility this year. He never showed much interest in these gatherings before, always finding excuses about medical equipment sales conferences or client meetings that conveniently conflicted with our facility's events. But there he was, arranging the catering and even checking the presentation equipment himself. My name is Evelyn Turner, and this is the story of how my husband's betrayal became his ultimate downfall. The day started perfectly, almost too perfectly. Morning sunlight streamed through the large windows of our facility's conference room, highlighting the elaborate spread of breakfast pastries and coffee on the side table. Staff members arrived gradually, carrying their folders and tablets, many offering warm greetings. My sister Madison came early to help, her lawyer's instincts already on high alert as she watched Nathan flutter around the room with unusual enthusiasm. "Something's off with him," she whispered, helping me arrange the meeting materials. "He's never this involved in facility matters." I nodded, my stomach churning with familiar anxiety. "I know." The first sign of trouble came when my cousin Olivia arrived. She wore a fitted dress that seemed inappropriate for a healthcare facility meeting, her smile a touch too bright as she air-kissed my cheeks. "Evelyn, darling, the facility looks amazing as always," she gushed, but her eyes were already scanning the room for someone else. I watched as Nathan's face lit up when he saw her, a micro-expression that would have been imperceptible to anyone who hadn't spent 10 years memorizing every detail of their spouse's face. My father Harrison, the retired hospital administrator, was in the middle of his usual speech about the importance of quality patient care when Nathan clinked his glass, standing up with that smug smile I'd grown to hate over the past few months. "I have an announcement to make," he said, his voice carrying across our suddenly silent conference room. 20 pairs of eyes turned to him, including mine. "I believe in transparency, and it's time for me to be transparent with everyone here." My hands grew cold around my water glass. I knew what was coming, had known it was coming for months, but that didn't make it any easier. "Olivia and I are in love," he declared, reaching for her hand across the table. "We've been seeing each other for the past year, and we've decided to be together openly. Evelyn and I are getting divorced." The silence that followed was deafening. The soft hum of medical equipment from the nearby patient wing seemed amplified in the stillness. I could feel everyone's eyes shift from Nathan to me, waiting for the breakdown, the screaming, the tears. My mother Eleanor, still carrying herself with the composure of a former head nurse, half rose from her chair, ready to comfort me. Instead, I took a slow sip of water and set the glass down carefully, just as I'd learned to do during countless difficult family meetings with patients. "Is that all?" I asked, my voice steady with the same professional calm I used when handling facility crises. Nathan's triumphant smile faltered. This wasn't the reaction he'd expected. "Evelyn," he started, his tone condescending as if explaining a complicated medical procedure to a child, "I know this must be shocking." "Not really," I interrupted, standing up and straightening my blazer with the precision I'd learned during my nursing years. "Though I am curious about one thing, Olivia. Did he promise you a position on the facilities board? Because that might be a bit complicated now." Olivia's perfectly manicured hand tightened around Nathan's. "What do you mean?" I smiled, reaching for my phone with the same methodical movement I used when checking patient charts. "Oh, you'll find out soon enough. But please, don't let me stop you two from celebrating your grand announcement. I'm sure you have patients to attend to." "Evelyn," my father started, his face red with the same anger I'd seen when he dealt with negligent hospital staff, but I held up my hand. "It's fine, Dad, really." I turned to address the stunned room full of healthcare professionals. "I apologize to everyone for this unexpected entertainment. Please enjoy the breakfast." I need some air. As I walked out onto our facility's terrace overlooking the healing garden, I heard chairs scraping and voices rising. Madison followed me out, wrapping an arm around my shoulders with the protective instinct of both a sister and a lawyer. "You knew," she said. It wasn't a question. "For months," I confirmed, pulling out my phone and sending a quick text to Daniel, my lawyer. "And I've been preparing." "Preparing for what?" she asked, just as my phone buzzed with Daniel's response. I showed her the message, "All documentation is ready. Operation Patient Safety is go." "Evelyn," Madison breathed, "what have you done?" I could hear Nathan inside, his voice raised as he tried to maintain control of the situation that was rapidly spiraling away from his carefully orchestrated plan. Through the window, I watched as Olivia touched his arm possessively, her nurse's ID badge glinting in the morning light. "What have I done?" I echoed, a smile playing at my lips. "I've simply made sure that patient safety has an excellent lawyer, big sister. And trust me, what's coming is going to be one hell of a diagnosis." The look of confusion on Madison's face slowly transformed into understanding, then admiration. Behind us, the facility chaos continued to unfold, but for the first time in months, I felt the same calm that had carried me through countless medical emergencies. Nathan thought he was destroying my world today. He had no idea he just walked right into mine. The morning after the facility meeting disaster, I sat in Daniel's office, watching him sort through the stack of documents I'd been collecting for months. The files were filled with financial records, patient care reports, and internal audits. My friend Rachel perched on the leather armchair beside me, scrolling through messages from staff members still reeling from yesterday's events. 37 texts asking if you're okay, Rachel announced, shaking her head, and one very nasty one from Olivia calling you an ice queen. Should I respond to any of these? "No need," I replied, focusing on Daniel as he pulled out a particular file. "Let them talk." Daniel adjusted his glasses, spreading papers across his mahogany desk. The morning light caught the framed medical malpractice certifications on his wall. "Everything's in order, Evelyn." The timing couldn't be better, actually. Nathan signed the last transfer documents 3 days ago, thinking they were routine facility paperwork. "Show me again," I said, leaning forward. He pointed to Nathan's signature, bold and careless, at the bottom of each page. "These give you controlling interest in all 3 care facilities." He was so busy planning his grand announcement that he didn't even read what he was signing. The memory of how I discovered the affair flooded back. 6 months ago, I'd noticed Nathan's sudden interest in his phone during our facility board meetings, the way he'd angle it away from me while texting. One night, he'd left his laptop open in his home office, and a message from Olivia popped up, "Can't wait until she's out of the picture. Everything will be ours, including the new medical equipment contracts." "Evelyn?" Rachel's voice pulled me back to the present, her data analyst's eyes scanning my face with concern. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I said, straightening my spine with the same composure I'd maintained through years of difficult patient consultations. Just remembering the day I decided enough was enough. Daniel gathered the papers into a neat pile, organized with the precision of a seasoned medical malpractice attorney. "Well, your preparation paid off. The care facilities are essentially yours now. Nathan's shares in the main company are worth practically nothing without controlling interest in the subsidiary facilities." My phone buzzed. Madison calling. I put her on speaker. "Sis, you need to hear this," she said, her voice urgent. "Nathan just tried to access the facility accounts. He's at the bank right now, throwing a fit because his codes don't work anymore." I checked my watch, the same one I'd worn through countless night shifts as a nurse. Right on schedule. Did he try calling the IT department? Oh yes, Madison laughed. They told him they could only take instructions from the majority shareholder and certified healthcare administrator. Rachel clapped her hands in delight. Oh, this is better than those medical dramas. I love it. Gets better, Madison continued. Olivia is with him, and apparently she's not taking the news well. Something about promises he made about their future in medical equipment sales. Daniel held up another document, this one bearing the state medical board's seal. Speaking of futures, we should discuss the ethics violation reports. The irony is beautiful. His own negligence in reviewing the documents protects your position completely. He can't touch anything you've acquired independently during the marriage, including the healthcare facilities I've quietly taken control of, I finished, allowing myself a small smile, the kind I used to give patients when delivering good news. The office door opened, and Daniel's assistant poked her head in. Mr. Reed is on line 1. He sounds upset. Daniel looked at me questioningly. I nodded, feeling the same steadiness I'd relied on during emergency situations. He pressed the speaker button. Nathan's voice filled the room, tight with barely controlled rage. Daniel, what the hell is going on? I need access to the facility accounts restored immediately. I'm afraid I can't help you with that, Nathan, Daniel replied with the calm demeanor of an experienced medical malpractice attorney. I represent the majority shareholders' interests now. What are you talking about? I own those facilities. Actually, you don't, I spoke up, using my most professional administrator voice. Not anymore. There was a moment of stunned silence, the kind that falls in a hospital room before critical news is delivered. Evelyn, you're there? What have you done? Nothing you wouldn't have done, I said, keeping my voice level with years of practice in delivering difficult news. Just protecting patient care standards and facility integrity. You taught me that, remember? Always be one step ahead in healthcare management. This is ridiculous, he sputtered. I'll fight this. With what money? I interrupted. The personal accounts are frozen pending our divorce settlement, and the facility accounts, well, you know how that's going. Olivia's voice came through in the background, shrill with the panic I'd heard from nurses during code blues. You said everything was taken care of. You promised me those equipment contracts. I'll call you back, Nathan snapped, and the line went dead. Rachel slow clapped. That was magnificent. It's not over, Daniel warned, his expression serious like a doctor preparing to deliver a difficult diagnosis. He'll try to fight this. Let him, I said, standing up and smoothing my professional attire. Everything was done legally. He signed every document voluntarily. His ego made him careless. He never thought I'd be capable of outmaneuvering him, just like he never bothered to understand the complexities of running a care facility. My phone buzzed again, a text from my mother. Your father's furious about the scandal, but I'm proud of you. As a former nurse, I know you're doing what's best for patient care. Come to dinner tonight. Going to face the family? Madison asked, still on speaker. I gathered my purse, feeling lighter than I had in months. Yes. It's time they understood that the quiet, agreeable Evelyn they knew is gone. Sometimes patient advocacy needs a little help, and I'm more than happy to be its assistant. As I left Daniel's office, I could almost hear the sound of Nathan's carefully constructed world crumbling around him, like the beeping of a failing vital signs monitor. It was music to my ears. My mother's house smelled like garlic and childhood memories as I walked through the front door. She was stress cooking again, a trait I'd inherited from her, just like my dedication to patient care. The kitchen counter was already crowded with 3 different pasta dishes. Mama? I called out, Are you feeding an entire hospital staff? She turned, wooden spoon in hand, marinara sauce dotting her retired nurse's apron. Evelyn, come taste this sauce. Does it need more basil? Before I could answer, my father's voice boomed from his study, carrying the authority of his years as a hospital administrator. Is that her? Evelyn, in here now. Here we go, I muttered, squeezing my mother's hand as I passed. Dad sat behind his massive desk, looking every bit the healthcare executive he'd been for 30 years. Close the door, he commanded. I did, then took a seat across from him, smoothing my skirt with steady hands trained by years of patient care. What you're doing, he began, it's not right. Taking a healthcare facility from him. Taking what's rightfully mine and protecting our patients, I corrected. There's a difference. He slammed his hand on the desk. It's vindictive. This isn't how we handle healthcare matters. Healthcare matters? I laughed, the sound sharp and bitter like hospital coffee. Like how Nathan and Olivia handled things? By humiliating me in front of our entire staff? That's different. Why? Because he's a man? Because he's supposed to be allowed to do whatever he wants while I just smile and maintain patient care standards? My father's face reddened. You're acting out of anger. No, I cut in, leaning forward. I'm acting out of professional responsibility. Something you taught me. Remember? Never compromise on quality of care. That's what you used to say. The study door opened, and my mother walked in, wiping her hands on her apron, carrying herself with the quiet authority she'd developed over decades as a head nurse. Harrison, enough. Our daughter is right. Eleanor, no. You listen to me. She interrupted, moving to stand behind my chair with the same protective stance she'd shown countless patients. For 10 years, we watched Nathan treat our daughter like she was just a trophy wife who happened to run care facilities, making her doubt her administrative decisions, diminishing her achievements in patient care. And now you're angry because she finally showed him what real healthcare leadership looks like. My phone buzzed, an email from Nathan. I opened it, reading aloud, Evelyn, we need to talk. What happened between us doesn't have to affect the facilities. We can work something out about the medical equipment contracts. Please be reasonable. Ha. See, my father gestured at the phone. He's trying to be reasonable. No, I replied, typing a quick no thank you response. He's panicking because Olivia is probably realizing he's not the wealthy healthcare executive she thought he was. My mother squeezed my shoulder with the gentle touch she'd used to comfort worried families. How are you really doing, sweetheart? I'm okay, I said, surprised to find I meant it. Actually, I'm meeting Daniel and Rachel to go over the next steps in our patient care improvement plan. Daniel, my father frowned. Your lawyer? More schemes? Strategy, I corrected, standing up, and protection. Nathan's not going to take this lying down. As if on cue, my phone rang. Madison. Sis, she said when I answered, heads up. Nathan just left my office. Your office? He tried to convince me to talk you into being reasonable. When I refused, he implied he might have some dirt on Dad's old hospital administration practices. My father's face went pale as he overheard. I put the phone on speaker. What exactly did he say, Madison? Something about irregular Medicare payments from the 90s. He's bluffing, right? My father stood up so quickly his chair rolled back, his face showing the same panic I'd seen when the hospital faced audit crises. That bastard. He promised those records were destroyed. Dad, I turned to him, watching decades of healthcare administration confidence crumble into worry. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, her nurse's training failing to mask her shock. Harrison, what records? He sank back into his chair, suddenly looking every bit his age. It was a different time. Healthcare administration was done differently then. I held up my hand, speaking into the phone. Madison, I'll call you back, ending the call. I faced my father with the same focused attention I gave to difficult patient cases. Tell me everything. Now. 20 minutes later, I was back in my car, hands shaking as I dialed Daniel's number. Cancel dinner plans. We need to meet now. Nathan's playing dirtier than we expected. What's wrong? Daniel asked, his medical malpractice expertise evident in his tone. He's going after my father, old Medicare billing practices that could cause problems, big problems. I'm on my way to the office. Bring your father's records, everything you can find. I started the car, my mind racing through possible scenarios with the same efficiency I used in facility crisis management. Nathan wasn't just trying to save himself anymore. He was willing to destroy my entire family's healthcare legacy to do it. The game had changed. But he'd forgotten one crucial detail. I wasn't the same woman who'd silently endured his dismissal of my healthcare management abilities. My phone lit up with a text from my mother, "Do what you need to do. Protect our family's medical reputation. I love you." I took a deep breath, shifted into drive, and headed toward Daniel's office. Nathan wanted to play hardball with patient care? Fine. He was about to learn that ethical healthcare practices weren't his only problem. He had made an enemy of a woman who'd spent her life fighting for what was right. Daniel's office was dark except for his desk lamp when I arrived with my father's old Medicare files. Rachel had joined him, her laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard as she analyzed healthcare data patterns. "I've been digging," she announced without looking up. "You're not going to believe what I found about Olivia's nursing license history." Later, I said, dropping the files on Daniel's desk. "We need to handle this first." Daniel opened the first folder, scanning documents yellowed with age. His expression grew increasingly grave, his medical malpractice expertise recognizing the severity. "This is serious, Evelyn. These Medicare billing records, if they got out. My father's medical reputation would be ruined," I finished. "I know." Rachel finally looked up from her screen. "But how did Nathan even know about these?" A memory hit me like a crash cart emergency, the annual healthcare conferences. Every year, he'd attend with my father. They'd discuss industry practices, share administrative stories. I grabbed my phone, dialing Madison. "What's up?" she answered immediately. "Those healthcare conferences Nathan attended with Dad, were you ever there when they came back?" "Sometimes. They'd be excited, talking about new industry developments." "Oh God. Dad talked, didn't he?" "Bingo," I said, hanging up. Daniel was already organizing the documents into piles. "Okay, we need to." His office door burst open. Olivia stood there, her nurse's scrubs wrinkled, mascara streaked down her face. She spat at me. "You've ruined everything." Rachel stood up, moving between us with the protective instinct of a healthcare professional, but I waved her off. "Please, enlighten me about how I ruined your perfect plan to steal my husband and my facility's medical equipment contracts." "He was never supposed to lose his position," she shrieked. "This isn't what we planned." I leaned forward. "We?" Olivia's face went white. She stumbled backward, but Rachel was faster, closing the door behind her. "Sit down," I commanded, using my administrator voice. "Tell me everything." "I don't have to." "Actually, you do," Daniel interrupted. "Because right now, you're potentially complicit in healthcare fraud." So sit down. She collapsed into a chair, her nurse's uniform crumpled, her perfect image cracking like a broken medical monitor. Marcus started it, she whispered. Marcus? The name hit me like a failed resuscitation. Your ex-husband? She nodded miserably. He knew about Nathan's kickbacks from the medical equipment vendors. Said if I could get Nathan to leave you, to transfer the facility assets before the divorce. Kickbacks? Daniel asked sharply, his medical malpractice radar on full alert. From inflated equipment prices. The facilities were overcharged, and he got a percentage. He owes a lot. My phone buzzed, a text from Nathan, last chance. Meet me tomorrow at noon, the cafe where we had our first date, or your father's Medicare history goes public. I showed the message to Daniel, who smiled for the first time that night. Perfect. He's desperate. Rachel turned her laptop around. Speaking of desperate, look what I found. Emails between Marcus and Olivia planning everything, including the equipment pricing schemes and how to use your father's old records if things went wrong. Olivia burst into tears. I'm sorry. Marcus threatened to report my medication errors if I didn't help. I never wanted. Save it, I cut her off, using my best facility administrator tone. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything about these equipment contracts. Names, dates, amounts, everything. I can't. These vendors are dangerous. More dangerous than losing your nursing license? I asked quietly. Because right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and a medical board investigation. She stared at me for a long moment, then reached for her phone with trembling hands. I have pictures from when I followed him to vendor meetings, the contracts, the real prices versus what we were charged. Daniel examined the photos. This is perfect. These pricing schemes are illegal. If the medical board and state authorities were to receive an anonymous tip, Nathan would be ruined, Rachel finished. No, I said, standing up. First, we meet him tomorrow. Let him think he's winning. Then we protect our patients from both his schemes and his substandard equipment. What about me? Olivia asked in a small voice. I looked at my cousin, this nurse who had tried to take everything from me, now broken and afraid. You're going to help us. For the sake of patient safety, and your career, oh, I smiled, Marcus will get exactly what he deserves. Daniel, draft up immunity paperwork for Olivia's testimony to the medical board. Rachel, get those equipment pricing emails ready. Tomorrow at noon, we're having a very interesting coffee date. As Olivia signed the papers Daniel quickly prepared, my phone lit up with another message, this time from my mother. Remember what I taught you about patient advocacy and forgiveness. I typed back, yes, but first, justice for our patients. Looking at the tear-stained face of my cousin, the determined expressions of my friends, and the damning evidence spread across Daniel's desk, I felt the same calm certainty I'd developed during years of patient care. Tomorrow, Nathan would learn that healthcare ethics weren't just guidelines. They were a carefully orchestrated symphony of consequences, and I was conducting every note. The cafe looked exactly the same as it had 12 years ago when Nathan first asked me out, back when I was still a floor nurse and he was just starting in medical equipment sales. The same vintage posters on exposed brick walls, the same mismatched chairs, the same rich coffee aroma. But I was different. I chose a corner table with a clear view of both exits, the same way I positioned myself in difficult patient conferences. Rachel sat at the counter, pretending to work on her laptop. Madison and Daniel waited in a car across the street. Everything was in place. Nathan walked in at exactly noon, wearing his favorite sales presentation suit, the one he wore when closing big equipment deals. He slid into the chair across from me, that familiar smug smile playing on his lips. "You're looking well," he said as if we were meeting for a casual catch-up. "Cut the small talk," I replied. "You threatened my father." He leaned back, adjusting his gold cuff links, a gift from my father last Christmas. "Business is business, darling. You forced my hand. Like you forced Olivia's hand with those inflated equipment prices?" His smile faltered for a split second. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, playing a recording. Olivia's voice, tearful but clear, detailing the scheme with Marcus, the kickbacks, everything. The color drained from his face like a patient going into shock. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I slid an envelope across the table. "These are copies of your equipment pricing contracts, showing the real costs versus what you charged our facilities. I wonder what the state medical board would think." "You wouldn't dare," he hissed, but his hands shook as he opened the envelope. "Try me." "Oh, and before you think about those documents about my father," I pulled out another envelope. "Turns out Medicare has a statute of limitations. But healthcare fraud, that's very current." He gripped the table's edge, knuckles white. "What do you want?" "Sign these." I produced a stack of papers. "Full divorce settlement. You walk away with your personal assets, what's left of them, no alimony, no claims on the facilities." "And if I don't?" "Then in about." I checked my watch, the same one I'd worn through countless night shifts, 30 minutes. An anonymous tip about fraudulent medical equipment pricing reaches the authorities, with proof. His face contorted with rage. "You vindictive." "Careful," I interrupted. "Think very carefully about your next words." The cafe door chimed. Olivia walked in, followed by Marcus. "Right on schedule." "What is this?" Nathan demanded, half rising. "Sit down," Marcus ordered, his voice low. "We need to talk about the money you skimmed from those equipment contracts." Nathan's face went from red to white. "You told her?" "She told me everything," I said. "How you inflated prices to cover your gambling debts. How you promised Marcus a piece of the healthcare business once you married Olivia and took control. One problem, though, it was never your business to give away." "You set me up?" Olivia said, her nurse's badge catching the light, tears in her eyes. "Used me to cover your equipment fraud, made me betray my own family and my nursing ethics." Marcus stepped closer to our table. "I want my money, Nathan. Now." I don't have it," Nathan stammered. "Then sign the papers," I said, pushing them toward him. "Walk away, clean start, fresh." His hand trembled as he reached for the pen. "This isn't over." "Actually, it is." I nodded to Rachel, who pressed send on her laptop. "Those emails about the equipment pricing schemes are now in the possession of every board member and the state medical board. Your reputation in healthcare is finished." He scrolled his signature across each page, desperation replacing arrogance in his eyes. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "I learned from the best," I replied, standing up. "You always said healthcare management was about staying one step ahead." As I gathered the signed papers, Marcus grabbed Nathan's arm. "We're going to have a private conversation about payment plans." "Evelyn," Nathan called as I headed for the door, "I'm sorry. I never meant." "Save it," I cut him off. "You're only sorry you got caught compromising patient care." "Goodbye, Nathan." Outside, Madison and Daniel were waiting. "Did he sign?" Daniel asked, his medical malpractice expertise evident in his careful examination of the documents. I handed him the papers. "Every page." "How long until it's official?" "I'll file them today. By next week, you'll be free." Madison hugged me tight. You did it, sis. My phone buzzed, a message from my mother. Is it done? I typed back, yes. Family dinner tonight? Her response came immediately, of course. Your father's making his famous lasagna. Says he's never been prouder of your commitment to ethical healthcare. Looking back through the cafe window, I watched as Nathan withered under Marcus's quiet threats. Olivia caught my eye and mouthed thank you before slipping away. Ready to go? Madison asked. I took one last look at the cafe where my story with Nathan had begun and where it had just ended. More than ready. It's time for a new chapter in patient care. As we walked away, I heard Nathan's desperate voice floating through the open window, pleading with Marcus. But I didn't look back. Healthcare ethics had finally caught up with him, and I had a facility to run. The boardroom fell silent as I walked in, heels clicking against the polished floor. 12 pairs of eyes followed my movement to the head of the table, Nathan's former seat, my seat now. Good morning, I said, placing my laptop down. Shall we begin our patient care review? Harold, the oldest board member and former chief of medicine, cleared his throat. Miss Turner, given the unusual circumstances of your acquisition. You mean how I legally obtained controlling interest while my husband was busy planning to defraud our facilities through inflated equipment prices? I smiled pleasantly. Those circumstances. Nervous laughter rippled around the table. Before Harold could respond, the door burst open. Nathan stormed in, looking considerably less polished than during his sales presentations. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. This meeting can't proceed, he announced. I'm contesting the transfer of ownership. I didn't even look up from my laptop. Security, please escort Mr. Reid out. You can't do this. He slammed his hands on the table. These people need to know what kind of administrator you really are. Now I did look up. You mean the kind who caught her husband trying to embezzle facility funds through fraudulent equipment contracts? The room went deadly quiet. Nathan's face turned purple. That's right, I continued, pulling up documents on the projector screen. Let me show everyone exactly what kind of person I am, and more importantly, what kind of person you are. Spreadsheets filled the screen, detailed records of Nathan's equipment pricing schemes followed by suspicious transfers from facility accounts. I've already reported these discrepancies to the state medical board, I announced. The facilities will cooperate fully with their investigation. You're lying. Nathan sputtered, but his eyes told a different story. The boardroom door opened again, this time 2 security guards entered, followed by Daniel and, to everyone's surprise, Olivia in her nurse's uniform. Actually, Olivia said, her voice shaking slightly but carrying the professional tone of an experienced nurse, she's not lying. I've already given my statement to the medical board about everything, the equipment pricing fraud, the kickbacks, the plan to take over the facilities. Nathan lunged toward her. You treacherous. The security guards caught him before he could reach her. As they dragged him toward the door, he shouted, Your father. The Medicare records. Tell them about his billing practices. My father, I said calmly, maintaining the composed demeanor I'd learned from years of patient care, has already disclosed his past Medicare billing irregularities to the board's ethics committee. Unlike you, he's taken responsibility for his actions. Harold stood up, his medical authority evident in his bearing. I moved to formally recognize Evelyn Turner as CEO and chairperson of our healthcare facilities, effective immediately. Seconded, called out Dr. Maria Chin, our youngest board member. I've seen enough. The vote was unanimous. As the security guards finally managed to remove Nathan, his threats echoing down the hallway, I pulled up the next item on our agenda. Now, I said, let's discuss our facility's future and our commitment to patient care. 2 hours later, I stood in my new office, formerly Nathan's office, staring out at the healing garden below. Daniel entered with a stack of papers. The medical board wants to interview you tomorrow about Nathan's equipment pricing activities, he said. And Marcus has apparently skipped town. Good, I replied. One less problem to deal with. My phone rang. Madison. Sis, you need to turn on the news right now. I grabbed the remote, switching on the office TV. There was Nathan, being led out of a medical equipment vendor's office in handcuffs, along with several other sales executives. Anonymous tip, Daniel said with a small smile. Imagine that. Rachel burst into the office, waving her phone. Have you seen? It's everywhere. Healthcare Twitter is blowing up. How's Olivia holding up? I asked. Better, Rachel replied. She's in counseling. Says she wants to make amends through better patient care. The office door opened again, my parents this time. My father looked at the TV, then at me, his years of hospital administration experience evident in his measured response. I was wrong, he said simply. You handled this exactly right. My mother squeezed his hand, her nurse's instincts for caring showing in her gentle smile. We both underestimated you, sweetheart. It won't happen again. Another news alert flashed across the screen. Local healthcare executive arrested for equipment pricing fraud. More arrests expected. You know, Daniel said, for someone who just exposed healthcare fraud, protected patient care standards, and became CEO of 3 care facilities, you seem remarkably calm. I turned away from the TV, facing my family and friends, the people who had stood by me through everything. That's because, for the first time in years, I feel completely aligned with our mission, I said. No more compromising on patient care, no more looking the other way. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Thank you for giving me a second chance to be a proper nurse. I won't waste it. Looking around at my supporters, at the healthcare facilities I'd protected, at the future of ethical patient care I'd secured, I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of my victory. Professional integrity hadn't just helped me survive, it had helped me thrive. And this was just the beginning of our journey to better healthcare. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when I arrived for Nathan's arraignment. The healthcare industry scandal hadn't died down. Miss Turner, any comment on your ex-husband's plea deal? How does it feel to be the youngest female CEO in regional healthcare? I walked past them, Madison and Daniel flanking me like protective care staff. Inside, the marble halls echoed with whispers as we made our way to courtroom 3. You don't have to be here, Madison whispered. The prosecutor can handle this. I want to see his face, I replied. I need to. The courtroom doors opened, and there he was. Nathan in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed. Gone was the designer suit, the arrogant smile, the polished healthcare executive look. He looked small. All rise, the bailiff called out as the judge entered. I caught movement in my peripheral vision. Olivia slipped into the back row, wearing her nurse's uniform, having come straight from her shift. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave a slight nod. In the matter of the State versus Reed, the judge began. The proceedings moved quickly. The prosecutor outlined the charges: healthcare fraud, equipment pricing schemes, kickback arrangements. Nathan's lawyer, a far cry from the prestigious firm he once used, looked defeated before he even spoke. Your Honor, my client wishes to change his plea to guilty on all counts. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Nathan's shoulders slumped. Very well, the judge said. Mr. Reed, please rise. As Nathan stood, He turned slightly, his eyes finding mine. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd married, the one who used to talk passionately about improving healthcare through better equipment. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Before I accept your plea, the judge continued, do you wish to make a statement? Nathan cleared his throat. I'd like to address my ex-wife. The judge nodded. I sat straighter, maintaining the professional composure I'd learned through years of difficult patient consultations. Evelyn, his voice cracked. You were right about everything. I thought I was smarter than everyone else. I thought I could manipulate healthcare costs for profit, but you beat me at my own game. And the worst part is, you did it legally, perfectly. Everything I taught you about healthcare business, you used to protect patient care. Is there a point to this? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor. I'm trying to say I'm sorry. Not just for the fraud, but for underestimating you, for betraying you, for thinking you were just a nurse who wouldn't fight back. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, while this is touching, we have a plea agreement to discuss. Indeed, the judge said. Mr. Reed, this court accepts your guilty plea based on the agreement reached with the prosecution. You are hereby sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, with an additional 3 years of supervised release. As the judge continued listing the terms, including restitution payments to the healthcare facilities, my phone buzzed, a message from one of the medical equipment vendor's compliance officers. You were right. Found the hidden billing records. Sending details now. I forwarded it to Daniel without looking at him. We'd discuss it later. The bang of the gavel brought my attention back to the proceedings. As the bailiff led Nathan away, he tried one last time to catch my eye. I stared straight ahead, the same way I'd learned to maintain focus during medical emergencies. Outside, the reporters were waiting. This time, I stopped. Miss Turner, your response to your ex-husband's courtroom apology? I adjusted my blazer, channeling years of professional healthcare administration. Actions have consequences. Mr. Reed's actions compromised patient care, nearly destroyed our facilities, and ultimately destroyed his career. Let that be a lesson to anyone who thinks they can put profits over patient welfare. Back at my office, I found my parents waiting in the executive suite. My father held up a bottle of sparkling cider, remembering my healthcare facility's no alcohol policy. The board meeting went well? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Unanimous approval of your 5-year patient care improvement plan, he beamed. And our facility ratings are up 12% since the announcement of Nathan's plea deal. My mother poured the cider. To patient care, she said, raising her glass. To integrity, my father added. To both, I said, clinking glasses with them. My phone buzzed again, a text from Olivia. Thank you for not mentioning my nursing errors in court. I start my new position in geriatric care next week. I typed back, clean slate. Make our patients proud. Looking out my office window at the healing garden below, I watched the sun setting on one chapter of my life and rising on another. The facilities were thriving, Nathan was facing justice, and I. Earth to Evelyn. Madison waved her hand in front of my face. Where'd you go just now? I smiled, turning back to my family. Just thinking about tomorrow. We have work to do. Because that's the thing about healthcare ethics. They don't just protect patients, sometimes they deliver opportunities. And I was ready to seize every single one. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fresh coffee and antiseptic as I unlocked the door to my old cafe, now transformed into a community health education center. The realtor had called yesterday with the news. The owners were selling, and I'd made the highest bid. It's perfect, Rachel said, running her hand along the exposed brick wall. But why this place? Because, I smiled, sometimes the best revenge is helping others. The vintage posters were being replaced with health education materials, the mismatched chairs rearranged for community workshops, but the bones were good, just like mine had been after Nathan's betrayal. My phone buzzed, a text from Daniel, medical equipment vendor audit complete. State board moving forward with full investigation. Good news? Rachel asked, noting my expression. The best kind. Justice keeps rolling in. The bell above the door chimed. Olivia walked in, looking different in her new geriatric care scrubs, more like the dedicated nurse I remembered from her early career days. When you asked me to meet you here, she said, glancing around at the health education posters, I almost didn't come. But you did. I pulled out a chair. Sit. We need to talk about our community outreach program. She sat, fidgeting with her ID badge. I heard about the equipment vendor investigation. They found everything. Yes, but that's not why I asked you here. I slid a folder across the table. She opened it, her eyes widening. This is a program proposal, I said. The Education Center needs a director of community health programs, someone who understands both patient care and redemption, someone who needs a real chance to make a difference. Tears welled in her eyes. After everything I did. The past is past, I interrupted. What matters is what we do for our community now. The door chimed again. My parents entered, followed by Madison and Daniel. Well, my father asked, looking around at the health education materials. Is it official? I held up the keys. Just signed the papers this morning. My mother pulled out a small, wrapped package. Then you'll need this. Inside was a framed photo, me at 22, in my first nurse's uniform, learning the value of patient care. Remember what you told me that first day, my mother asked. That someday you'd find a way to help more people. And now she runs 3 care facilities and a health education center, Madison grinned. Daniel cleared his throat. Speaking of helping people, the board approved your proposal to start a foundation supporting healthcare education for underprivileged students. They were particularly impressed with the mentorship program. A program I hope you'll help with, I said to Olivia. Your experience could help guide others toward ethical patient care. She wiped her eyes, nodding. I'd like that. My phone buzzed again, a news alert. Former healthcare executive begins prison term, ex-wife's facilities report record patient satisfaction scores. You know, Rachel said, reading over my shoulder, for someone who lost everything, Nathan sure helped you find your true calling. No, I corrected her. I found my calling in patient care long ago. He just made the mistake of trying to corrupt it. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, casting warm patterns on the educational displays. Outside, life moved at its usual hectic pace, but in here, time seemed to slow down to new beginnings. My father raised his glass of water. To ethical healthcare. My mother added, actually, I said, moving behind the old cafe counter, now converted to a reception desk, this place still has a working coffee machine. Let me make us some real drinks to toast with. As I worked the familiar machinery, muscle memory taking over, I caught glimpses of my reflection in the chrome surface. The woman staring back wasn't the same one who'd once sat here, accepting Nathan's first dinner invitation. She was stronger, wiser, more dedicated to her mission. I served the drinks, lattes with perfect foam hearts on top, just like I used to make, and raised my cup. To patient care, I said, which taught me that success isn't about profit margins, it's about making a difference. To second chances, Olivia added softly, and using them wisely. To justice, Madison raised her cup, served with both accountability and compassion. We laughed, and in that moment, I felt the last pieces click into place. The facilities I'd protected would thrive, the education center would become something meaningful, and the foundation would help create the next generation of ethical healthcare providers. As for Nathan, he was just another lesson learned, another chapter closed. The real story had always been about patient care, about finding my power, my voice, my true purpose. The bell chimed again as local residents wandered in, drawn by the new health education posters. I stood behind the counter where my journey had truly begun, ready to write the next chapter on my own terms. Because sometimes, healthcare ethics doesn't just protect patients, it helps you build something better from the challenges you've faced. And that's the most meaningful victory of all.